Hello everyone, welcome to another live hangout here at Voice Essentials. I hope you're all having a great Monday, or if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, it's almost certainly still Sunday. I hope you've had a great weekend. I have had the most massive weekend, and in fact the last 30 minutes has proven to myself that I'm obviously very tired because I am making mistakes and errors technically left, right and centre. I've been, of course, at the ANATS, the Australian National Association for Teachers of Singing conference, the national conference. It's held every couple of years. And I had the great pleasure of attending this conference. I did present a few times also, but most importantly, I was a delegate. I just... I've actually had the privilege and responsibility of organising an ANATS national conference before and putting it on, but I have to say, and this is a real shout out and credit to the organisers of this year's conference, it was outstanding. We had Brian Gill there from the US, we had Dave Sisko, a music theatre specialist also from New York, and we just had such an awesome time. Apologies if you're in the Facebook community, the Facebook group, community group page, Voice Essentials. You can look it up if you're not. Come and join us. Be a part of the conversation. I promised to send people notes, and all I managed to do, I think, was send 3 or 4 photos of just very generalised. I was that engrossed in the activities that I must admit I didn't end up posting anywhere near as frequently as I had intended. So my apologies. But look, it really was fabulous, and I'm hoping to perhaps be able to bring some new ideas, some new information to you over the coming weeks. And in fact, one of the main big topics during the conference was vocal acoustics. And it's my great pleasure. We've got a very special guest today. All of our guests here on Voice Essentials are special, but this gentleman is particularly so. He is, in the very truest sense of the word, a celebrity voice coach, and we're going to get to meet Dave Stroud in just a moment. And he is going to introduce us to, I think, some concepts around vocal acoustics and registrations and formants and some of those sorts of things. We've talked about that before here on the channel with Ken Bozeman, and it's going to be good to do that again with Dave. But of course, we're also going to be talking about the topic of AI, artificial intelligence. What does it mean for the world of learning to sing? I know that Dave has got a whole range of ideas and thoughts, and I look very much forward to talking all things singing with Dave right after this.
Sound check. Check 1, check 2.
G'day, Dave. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thanks you for having me.
Do you know what? I'm actually relieved I can hear you, because as you know, we've been having all sorts of tech issues all afternoon, and I apologise for cutting you off earlier. That was very rude, and it was my mistake. I own it. I hit the button too early and cut you off mid-sentence, so apologies.
It's totally fine.
Thank you so much for joining us. And as I introduced you just before, I think I've had a number of people on the channel before who are, who have taught celebrities, but I think in the grand scheme of that sort of title, you literally are a person who is a celebrity voice coach. You've taught some big names. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I hate the term celebrity voice coach passionately, beyond what you can imagine. I mean, I fell backwards into being able to work with some amazing people, and luck tends to reward those who are prepared. And so I guess maybe the work I did over the years to learn as much as I could, and I continue, so that doesn't ever end, but put me in a nice position of when the opportunities came up, then I was ready for it. But it's not something you can plan. I was never interested in being that, and I'm still not. my interest is in working with people who want to get from point A to point B, and they're hungry for information, and they love what they do. And if that happens to be somebody that has an established career, then great, fantastic.
Yeah, awesome.
Do I have to invoice the record label now? Because that's a horrible pain in the butt. So, there are the downsides of that being in the business on that
Sure.
level.
And,
But it doesn't matter to me. The truth is I just love working one-on-one.
yeah.
And that's what keeps me going. That's my energy. And, the different things that we do outside of that are great.
Yeah.
But the one-on-one work is really, that's where it's at.
And I actually know that that's not just your rhetoric in response to the term, because I've watched. We had Chris Johnson on the channel here a few weeks back, and he's
spectacular voice coach.
Brilliant at what he does.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And he was just speaking about yourself, and in my Facebook feed, because I'm friends with Chris, one of your Vocalize You concerts came up, I think, and if I'm not incorrect, I think that's what you were doing just a few weeks back. Is that right?
We did it in July.
Yeah,
so
okay.
Vocalize You is a 10-day program in July here.
Okay, awesome. And anyway, I went and watched one of those concerts. It was refreshing to see someone of your standard being so free in putting up what, unfortunately, and this is I'm even being clunky in saying it. You weren't putting up celebrity voices on your channel. Like, you weren't displaying, completely polished, perfect, hair all in the right place, notes all in the right place. You were putting up people who are passionate about singing. Some of them were getting up for the first time, and you were celebrating them, and I thought that was just A-class. I really did. Yeah. And it was a big part of what motivated me to want to make connection with you, because that's what we're all about here at Voice Essentials. It isn't about, fame and fortune. It's about pursuing your passion.
Yeah. Singing is such an amazing, magical experience, and this is why people get into it in the first place. Is what it does to them, and what it does to their brain and their ride through life. And if they happen to start to make a living out of it, and it's a career, great. The summer program is just, to me, it's life-changing experience for a lot of these people. We've had everybody, great people come and contribute. Whether it's the Chris Johnsons of the world, or the Quincy Jones and James Ingrams and Pentatonics and all these great people that have contributed over the years. The point of it is to change somebody's life.
No, it was really refreshing to see someone of your caliber celebrating voice. All warts and all. It really was. So thank you for doing that and being.
By the way, if you think that celebrities don't have warts, you're wrong.
I certainly don't think that, but I think unfortunately we do live in a celebrity culture where there is an expectation that people of said sort of umbrella are encouraged, whether internally or externally, to always present perfection. And I think, unfortunately, that has its place. Not unfortunately, that has its place. But I also, I'm at a place in my own journey of life where I'm returning to the authenticity, the humanity of imperfection, and really embracing that as a part of who we are, and the fact that we're not perfect, that we are broken, and that's actually a wonderful thing. It's not something that we should shy away from.
Totally.
Dave, let's talk about artificial intelligence, because you're a man who has been, on the cutting edge of a number of sort of developments in the regards of online learning spaces and apps and those sorts of things. And when I made contact with you recently, and we sort of, I asked you what you'd like to talk about, this subject of AI came up, and that was a flag to a bull for me, a red flag to a bull. I'm really keen to hear what you've got to say about that subject.
Well, you know the graphic that I sent you of the four houses?
This particular one.
Yeah, yeah. So when you're talking about objective, you're talking about something that the less personality is in, the better.
Yeah.
When you're talking objective, the more personality, the better. So, and what I mean by that is, if you look at those houses, house number one is completely objective. It's science.
Uh-huh.
It is or it isn't.
Okay.
So most of that is just black and white. So if you listen to Ken Bozeman, or you've listened to Ingo and Brad Story and different people like that in their research, what they're doing, if it can't be replicated or it can't be peer reviewed and replicated in another studio somewhere, then it's incorrect.
Right.
And that's objective, right?
Yes.
So as we move through the houses, the further along you go, the more objective you get.
Yes.
House number four is subjective, sorry. House number four is about as subjective as you can get.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's the psychology of how this works, and everybody is so different.
Yes.
That how you go about helping somebody is on every one of those things will be different. So when we talk about the objective, then I look at that and I go, how can we take some scripting, some algorithms, and let that be the one that selects what needs to happen with the development of the voice? Not saying that it should be the one that does the development, but it can detect what needs to be done. And if it's just an algorithm, and it's looking over a spectrum analyzer, and it can then say, from what I'm seeing, you need more work on your LCA or your TA or your CT.
Yeah.
Then that's completely objective. So we spent the last year with a voice facility in Israel that we are now, in fact, we're just starting to test the algorithms in things like apps, so Objective-C or Adobe, as well as HTML5 and things like that, so that you can go to a piece of software, whether it's on our website or something else, and sing for it, and it will know what's working, what your strengths are, and where the areas are that you need to work. So we're already at that point. We're going to start bundling that in the SingPro software.
Wow.
And then what it'll do is it'll take you down sort of a schematic of the degrees of which these things show up, the degrees at which it, especially at 10,000 hertz and places like that we were finding a lot of information and noise and things like that gave us a lot of information on what was happening with the voice.
Yeah, right.
And then out of that algorithm, it can assign workouts. And those workouts are designed to mess with the formants up and down so that the singer, if they need to, if we need to lower that formant to get them to spend more time in sort of a CT dominant sound, they can. So going back to the graphic though, what happens is the further along you go, the less any AI or any computer is going to be effective. By the time you get to house number 3, you're actually trying to break the rules of house number 1 and 2 so that you can find your unique sound, your individuality. And I use Louis Armstrong as a perfect example of this. It doesn't take more than a note or two to know that's Louis Armstrong.
Yeah.
And that's our goal, your goal and my goal. Since we work in the contemporary CCM, by the way, you and I need to come up with a better acronym.
Well, I've got a colleague who has, and it is an acronym that I use because I too am not enamored with CCM. She coined PCM, which is Popular Culture Musics.
we're headed the right direction with that. Because if you call it CCM, under CCM, there's CCM. CCM stands for Contemporary Christian Music.
And it also,
So,
and I've also heard it used and coined, and that's actually the reason my difficulty is because I actually have a background in contemporary Christian music, and so the CCM was around, the contemporary Christian music was around much earlier than Levitre's CCM for contemporary commercial music, and so it was always clunky for me, so I tend to use PCM when I'm able to, and yeah. Anywho, we could.
That's all. We've gone down a rabbit hole, but I'm with you on it.
Yeah.
But going back to the point of PCM, CCM, is that you need to be individual and unique. You don't need to be perfect. That is not the point.
Yes.
You need to be unique. You need to have an individual sound, and you need to connect with your audience as quickly as possible.
Absolutely.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
So the goal isn't to sound like the singer who sang, who defined the role as in musical theater, and it's not your job to sound like what the composer 300 years ago meant it to sound like. That's opera, and those are legit art forms. But when we are talking about this kind of music, our job is to go, how can I help this singer find themselves authentically in their sound, in their voice, and keep driving back to truth?
Yes.
And that's not easy. It is not. It's
No.
For people outside of CCM or whatever PCM. It seems easy, but by the time you start actually trying to help somebody drill in and find that, it's not.
Yeah.
And it's a real challenge, and this is, I think it's great for voice coaches and artist development folks who can really help people find that. It's magic.
And,
so
sorry, but keep going.
I was going to say, so any pedagogy around that is not, it's not there to make you sound like that person who defined the role, or to Wagner sound, so we have to be working on that. It's the more unique you are, and then our job is to help make sure that they have the tools to do it all the time and in a healthy way.
Yeah, and on one level, that is incredibly freeing, isn't it, as a contemporary singer? And I'm conscious of the fact that I didn't mention my colleague's name who coined the PCM, so I just want to acknowledge her, Associate Professor Di Hughes from Macquarie University, who coined PCM. I guess the challenge for us as contemporary singers is that, like you're saying, we're not beholden to a set parameter of boxes that we're trying to tick. We're in search of that unique, free, authentic sound, but yet that's actually part of the challenge, isn't it? And I think that's what you're getting at, is we're not, the boundaries are not clearly set for us. We don't really have a target outside of the idea of authenticity that we're ultimately trying to hit, and that can be a little bit scary.
Well, and this is partly why established singers hesitate ever getting help with their voice. A lot of the singers that I've worked that are established never go ever and get help until they're in trouble. And the reason they don't is because they're so afraid that the teacher is going to take away their authenticity and make them sound trained.
Yes.
And so that is the challenge. You're right, exactly ahead on hitting that nail on the head here, where it sounds easy, but it's not. And if what happens is you run the pedagogy as if you would any other singer, and they start losing the uniqueness, you're actually hurting what they do.
Yeah.
I had one singer, actually. You guys probably know Daniel Bedingfield in Australia, right?
Yes, we do. Yep.
So when Daniel, the first thing Daniel said when he came in for a lesson was, "I effing hate you people." And he goes, "I don't want to be here, but I was told that I had to come in." And this is right after he had that accident in New Zealand.
Okay.
And it took me a year to get him to trust me.
Yeah.
Because he was so afraid I was going to take his sound away.
Wow.
But he's the kind of guy that will verbalize it. A lot of singers won't. Even though they're there sometimes and they're doing what you ask them to do, in the back of their mind, they're so afraid they're going to lose their uniqueness. And so that's a challenge. So I look at the pedagogy and I look at what needs to be put into place
Yeah.
to help them find the answer for why they're there. And we stop right at that line. We don't go any further. I'm very careful not to go any further until they ask for it. Because if I go any further, now I'm taking away from what they want.
Yeah.
And that's tempting as a teacher to go, it's tempting as a teacher to show, well, look at all the other things I can do. Like, I've just done a sliver of what I know. But
Yeah.
that's okay. If you go into a doctor, you don't need them to examine everything about you and show their whole knowledge base.
Yeah.
You just need them. My shoulder's a little short, so let's just work on that.
Yeah. I guess I'm hearing you say it's very tempting for us as teachers to want to imprint ourselves upon the client, and the client, may well not need that.
Yeah, and so what happens is voice teachers tend to start justifying their existence.
Yeah.
Right? You're coming to me, I got to give you a whole lot more to do. And true. I mean, the truth is people come in and yes, we need to get them in good fighting shape so they can hit the road and they're safe and all that good stuff. That's true. But we also need the balance of what we're doing that helps them get to what their goals are. And this is called student-centered teaching, which is,
Yes.
what are your goals? Let's fill in the gaps and get you there.
Yeah.
And then if you ask for more, or you can see the next event horizon up there and you want that, let's go further.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I love and personally aim at student-centered teaching. It's so important. We've sort of skipped around the subject of technique, and the second thing you wrote down, and I'll read it out for us, because I'm a bit scared by it, because I'm interested to see where this goes. Why technique is bad, in brackets, this would be around CCM and the fact that most successful singers never get help in this genre. Close brackets.
We've already started touching on it.
We have.
So the bad thing about technique is that's not the goal. Right? And so we spend all this time going to Nats conferences or, PAVA conferences or whatever, and we sit in there and we listen to Ken Bozeman use Voce Vista or whomever, and we go, gosh, I really need to know more about the science and the foundations, and I better know more about the pedagogies and what valves do what, and we sink ourselves into this deep, deep rabbit hole of knowledge, and then we forget what the purpose was in the first place. What's the purpose? The purpose is connecting humans.
Yeah.
Music is about, and voice is about connecting the dots. It's not about technique. Technique is a background noise to help us achieve the big goal, which is when you sing, are you connecting to the music, to the words in a way that your audience goes, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
They're living it, they're owning it, they're part of it, rather than, look what I can do. I can get up and listen to me sing a C6, and like everyone's going, who cares? You being able to sing that doesn't mean that you're connecting to my heart and what I care about.
Yeah.
And so if you go back and listen, I mean, what was the first, do you remember the first singer or band or musician that brought you into going, I want to be in music?
Do you know what? It's actually, I've never mentioned him here on the channel before, but we have a singer here in Australia. His name is Daryl Braithwaite. And he's a very well-known Australian vocalist. And I saw him on what was called, this is this is like 40 years ago. I saw him on a program called The Midday Show, and he was singing Pity the Child from Chess. Chess? Yeah, Chess. And and it spoke to me. And look, what you're saying right now so resonates with what we bark on about here at the channel. And that is, singing is about communication. It's about what gets from you to your audience. It's not about perfect notes. Yeah.
And there wasn't, when you were a kid and you heard that, there wasn't 1 second you went, oh man, is he going to hit that G5? Because
Yeah,
I think that's a G5.
yeah,
Oh man,
it's
is it
up
going
there.
to happen?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
don't care. You don't care.
I didn't because
And
he was selling it, man. He was giving it to me.
that's what, so technique should be a background noise that allows that to happen, but never replaces that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I go to these, over the years, I've gone to a lot of opera and I've gone to a lot of musical theater. And during intermission, you hear people talking, well, she was this kind of voice, or I didn't quite like the way she did that aria or whatever. And I'm like, wow, you guys are missing the point.
Yeah,
Like, it's not about, the speed of her vibrato on the C6 or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
And so that's the reason I wrote that, is I think it's really important that, singers have the latitude and the freedom to totally screw up. I mean, what draws us to the voice are the imperfections, not the perfections. That's why when you hear somebody overly trained, sometimes they feel a little boring,
yeah,
because it's not them being able to sing it perfectly. It's them, again, you're listening to Louis Armstrong and the cracking and the rough voice, and you go, God, that is interesting. Or the Bob Dylans, who are bending to the notes and sometimes never getting there, but how he says it, is authentic. And so whatever voice teacher's in the picture just needs to make sure he's feeling good about his voice and healthy, and that he can go on stage and he can always feel like there's a safety net there.
yeah. Well,
Never get in the way.
and I think it's these sorts of things that are giving rise to the practice, in studios of now detuning vocals as opposed to tuning vocals to actually
Too much melodyne.
And so they're actually dragging notes off center to sort of reestablish the human connection,
Some authentic, some humanism.
Yeah.
On one of my favorite songs is Earth, Wind, and Fire song, and at the end of Fantasy, listen to that. Philip Bailey goes flat.
Oh, Philip
and it's
Bailey.
awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
Philip Bailey.
I mean, you can't like put Philip Bailey down, right? He's an amazing singer,
Yeah.
and yet here he goes off this note, and they kept it in the recording. They didn't fix it.
One of my favorite.
It's fantastic.
One of my favorite recordings is a Sting live recording, and there are bum notes all the way through it, and I love it. I love it. I love that I'm listening to. They kept the authenticity of the live. It's live. They haven't. You can hear that they've gone in and done some post production, but they've left some bum notes in there for me, and that's great, because I didn't get to be there in the moment and actually hear those bum notes, and now they've left them there, and as a result, it's one of my favorite recordings. No, I mean it is Sting, so, and I'm great fan of Sting, but
Totally, me too. One of my favorites, Sting and Peter Gabriel and Steve Perry and singers like that was why I got into music.
Yeah. Again, it's never ceases to amaze me the amount of singing teachers who really want to get this sort of word out to students, that it's not about perfection. We're not aiming to sing perfect notes, but sadly, it's still it's still something that continues to be put out into the ether, and that's probably another whole conversation about culturally why
it's you know how it is. You just came back from a Nats thing, and you get all the voice teachers together, and they get real heady about all this, and it's fantastic. It does keep us going, and it keeps us learning.
Yeah.
But then we have to go back to the studio and make sure that all this new information sits in our tool belt right next to us, and we pull it out when it's necessary, but don't let it overcome the big picture.
Absolutely.
So, and that's the reason I put that in. It was a little like the AI thing. It's a little bit of a clickbait, but
yeah, but it was good. You got me. Let me go to the third thing that we've written down here, and that is the idea that I'm going to enjoy this conversation. I have to say, this next subject, I think, is again, I think we're going to be on the same page here. The idea that a method, speech level singing, Estelle, CVT, complete vocal technique, or any institutionalized method, is not being honest about what the needs of CCM singers are. Go for it.
All right. When you institutionalize the process, you take away the ability for the practitioner to decide outside that framework that the singer needs something else.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you any of those people behind the scenes building SLS or a still, because I know those, were breaking the rules all the time to try and figure things out. And then it becomes institutionalized. And look, I was responsible for the institutionalization of SLS. I sort of reverse engineered that until I reached a point where I go, I don't know if you're familiar with Herbert Noah or, well, the guy who created Voce Vista, Donald Miller. So I brought those guys in to the summer program back when I was doing SLS in 2008 or 7.
Okay.
And I did it specifically because I wanted those guys to bring in what they were doing to shake up this institutionalized idea of how methods work. Because it does not work that way.
Yeah.
And so anytime you start building frameworks around, okay, this is CBT, this is the way we do it, this is the still, this is all the positions, and this is, how
Figures.
it's done.
Yep.
I'm not saying any of that's not legit, because it is. The research, especially on the still side of things, has been really good stuff. But what I'm saying is that anytime you get too institutionalized by it and saying you're teaching still correctly, or you're teaching SLS correctly, or whatever method, you've now taken the ability for that practitioner to be creative with the tools. So it's kind of like going to school and learning to be an architect, and then going out and building the exact same house again and again and again. You've got the tools, great. Now be creative with those tools so that you can help that singer reach their maximum potential or goals, especially student-centered goals.
Yeah. And I think a way I've described it here in the past is, and I've actually got at least one video on this very subject, and that is it's almost like we kind of need, methodologists in some regards can be icebreakers. They can forge new paths, but equally, if we don't, they can become very blinkered, can't they? They can become very, if something's happening,
you've got your blinders on. This is what we do.
This is what we do, and there's sort of, and it's often why I'm given to here on the channel and here in my studio, saying, look, I'm not. I'll just get rid of that. I'm not looking to be known as a methodologist, or that is, I don't want to be that. I want to remain open. I want to remain eclectic, and it is a challenge because even the human propensity to being habitual, it can be a very difficult thing, can't it?
Yep. So it's easy to fall in that trap. One of my favorite, have you had Ingo Tietze on here yet?
No, I haven't. It would be a wonderful privilege to have him on, but I don't actually have any direct connect with him, so.
Okay. Well, one of the things you'll find when you do connect with him is Ingo is fantastic when you say to him, what about X, Y, and Z? And he goes, I don't know. Somebody should look into that. Here's the most published researcher on the planet, and he'll just shrug his shoulders and go, I don't know, let's dig in. I'm curious, what is that?
Yes.
He's not responding of, well, I am the most published researcher on the planet, so I must know. And that's the problem with the institutionalized thing, is because people get certified with these different methods, and then those methods those people who have done that feel responsible to be able to say, I know.
Yes.
Or the person that's training them has a responsibility to say, well, this is it. I have the answer. And you know what? We don't have answers. I'm giving you my opinions tonight. And like I said, with the fundamental stuff, the very early stage stuff in house number 1, there's so much research that we can fall back on and said, well, it looks like this is happening, that, we're getting higher pitches because the CT is stretching and then the TA is contracting. And so between the tension there, we can raise pitch. Great. Those are objectives. And then as we move more subjective, we are all giving opinions. We are all saying, this has worked for me.
Yeah.
But that is never, ever, ever a final answer.
No.
And that's the problem with institutionalized methods, is now we have somebody saying, this is the answer, you got to trust me. You're paying me good money to certify you in one of these methods, so this has to be the answer. And that doesn't leave room for the ability for anybody in that situation to say, I don't know, I really am not sure.
So I'm going to actually to say I'm about to play the devil's advocate would be disingenuous, because that's actually not what I'm seeking to do. But I want to ask a question that I can almost hear that would want to be posed back at you by some. Certainly not myself, I must say, but I'll pose the question back to you. So how do you reconcile what you've just said against the fact that you yourself have an online singing course, you have a community of teachers, the VIP program? How do you Dave Stroud, the leader of that, the creator of that, how do you reconcile what you've just said in regards to methodology to what you're doing?
So anything that I've done with SingPro, or the research that we've done with that, has to do with the objectives.
Yeah.
Anything further than that is subjective, which is why there is no hierarchy in VIP. The vocology and practice teachers, there's nobody on top.
Okay.
So if you look at the logo of VIP, it's a bunch of dots that look like it's around the world kind of thing.
Okay.
Those represent knowledge nodes. That means everybody on this planet that is involved in this is a pocket of knowledge, and your frame of reference and what you bring to the table is different than anybody else's. And it doesn't matter if you've been teaching 30 years or 3 years. You've got something different to offer than anybody else. And that's the encouragement. And so that's the answer, is there's not a hierarchy. There's not somebody saying, this is the method, because there is no the method. There's many methods. What can we learn from each other? So Chris Johnson's been spending a lot of time on tongue tension and articulators.
Yes.
Right. He's done a deep dive on that. And so the rest of the VIP world gets to benefit from his presenting what he's learned, very, very similar to a symposium.
Yes.
But nobody is saying this is the right way. Any part of the VIP entrance is a assessment, but it has everything to do with the objectives, how well you understand the formants and the harmonics, what they do, how well do you understand, basically, if you read Principles of Voice Production, Ingo's book, or Vocology, those are all pulled from those ideas, and they're all researched ideas.
Yes.
But then from that point forward, how do you operate the business of your studio? We all benefit from somebody who's running 15 studios, or somebody who just is like me. It's just me one-on-one.
Yeah.
And so that's the answer to that. There's not a conflict for me.
I didn't think there would be, but I wanted to give you the right of reply to the questions that I know would come.
Totally. Yeah, totally. And I appreciate the question a lot, because the reason I appreciate it so much is because I came from the institutionalized hierarchy.
Yeah.
And I just watched how much knowledge was being lost by this person who is a lower level, this person who's a higher level. This person up here needs to learn from this person, but they can't because they're postured in a position where they go, I have to have the answers for you.
Sure.
And so that I just think it's a facade.
So the trickle down really doesn't trickle down.
I've worked with singers. I've got one of the singers I work with right now that's the main background singer for The Voice here in America and does all the contract work and is touring with Blake Shelton and things like that. She has information I'll never, ever, ever, ever in this world have firsthand. I want to learn from that.
Yeah.
So bringing her into the picture is beneficial for everyone else as well, because we're never going to have that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love the I love your positioning of that, and a friend of mine, Sharon, at the conference on the weekend, very dear friend, we were talking about the struggle between the positive tension between confidence and humility, and one of her, I think it's actually her next door neighbor, is a behavioral psychologist. and the behavioral, if I'm relating this story correctly, I believe it's the behavioral psychologist was encouraging to constantly sit on the 51% confidence, 49% humility. It gives you that forward drive, but it never allows you to be so, ahead of yourself that you start making, exaggerated errors.
Yeah, and it's hard because students come in and want to feel like they're in a confident, safe place, right?
Absolutely.
But the problem, you just have to check yourself as a teacher to make
Yeah.
sure that you're not going so far. You're creating answers because you feel like you have to have an answer.
Yeah.
And again, that's why I appreciate being around Ingo so much, is because he'll easily just go, I don't know. Good
Yeah.
question.
Let's extrapolate that just as a final thing before we go to some Q&A. Let's extrapolate that out to our singers, and we mentioned the 49-51 with us as teachers. How do you think that bears out in how we can encourage, the people that are watching our video right now? How do you think we can encourage people towards, or what do you do to encourage people towards maintaining that sense of inner balance that allows them to stand up in front of people with charisma and with a sense of confidence, but yet maintain that sense of humanity and authenticity?
You mean as a voice coach, maybe doing a master class or a workshop, or are you talking to a singer?
You all of the above, or you answer it as you will.
As a singer, I think singers who are really genuine kind of bring that to the stage as it is. They're just like, listen, I'm just grateful to be here, and I want to share with you these songs I've written or my experience or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't see that as much with singers, to a certain degree. I mean, I have worked with singers who really feel a responsibility to be, they're icons. They've been around a long time,
Yeah.
and they're struggling with their voice, and they don't want the world to know. So there is that as well. And I don't know. I don't know if I have the answer for them on that one, because I'm not the guy that has to stand up on the stage and sing to 10,000 people. And they want to feel confident going on the stage, but at the same time, they also want to be human. So I'm just going to have to skip that part of it, because I stopped performing so long ago that I don't think that I'm qualified to answer.
Do you think then that, just to pick up on a thread of what you've just said, and does this come back to the celebrity culture actually coming back from the audience to the stage of a sense of stigma that in a not dissimilar way, and I'm very careful in using this as an analogy, and for those of you who are watching, I am wanting to be sensitive in using this as an analogy. When we think about depression and the stigmas that go around mental illness, do we have similar stigmas when it comes to voice issues and the fact that an older voice, anatomically is likely to atrophy as it gets older, and these sorts of things, and yet the audience is unwilling to allow that voice to naturally atrophize? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think the audience isn't willing to. The audience is looking for the romantic era of when that voice was what it was.
Yeah.
When we fell in love with Sting for the first time, and then we go see him live, and his voice is Miss Pie, and we go, what happened? That's on us as the listener. Yes. Because we're looking for that, and that's just not realistic. I mean,
yeah.
And just some of the great singers over the years. I don't know if you've heard Steve Perry's new album. It just came out on Friday.
I have not yet.
But one of my favorite singers ever, right?
Yeah.
He was Journey. His voice was the voice of almost 2 decades. That was the voice.
Yes.
And he's out with a new album now, and it's fantastic. But it's not going to be Steve Perry of 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So then we have to look at it as like, what is the life story he's bringing now instead of back then? Because it's different. I guess he's almost 70.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a different conversation
Yes.
than when somebody's in their 30s.
and it
And you would
is.
hope so. I mean, what if you were having the same conversation with somebody 30, 40 years later? It's like, well, that's not very interesting anymore.
Yeah. Is this though? Is this very this going to get harder and harder? Given that when I was growing up in the 80s as a teenager, and and I've shared this story before. I remember basically being at the record store waiting for my favorite album to come out, this new release, this band, and just grabbing that and then taking this. It was a cassette tape, and just basically playing it to death for the next 48 hours, over and over,
Out. Yeah,
and
totally.
literally, but just consuming the journey that the band had built into. You didn't listen to one song on stream, on Spotify, and then, I've got to actually discipline my children. I've got teenage children. I've got to discipline them to say, no, don't let the song finish. Now I'm just getting them to finish a song, let alone allow them the artist to take them on the journey of the album. And I wonder if it's going to get even harder and harder and harder for. See, we can listen to a Steve Perry new album in 2018 and go, I want to listen to what your story is now. But I wonder whether it's going to become even more difficult for artists in the future to be able to invoke that response. That's probably a very big topic, and we probably don't have time.
It's a big topic. I think that we just are in such an era of right now. Yeah. I don't know what the answer is to that. Yeah. But I do want to circle around to something you did say. You sort of touched on it, and this is a passion project of mine that hopefully at some point I'll be able to do something bigger with. But the whole of fame and how it affects people's brains and the negative effects of brain. Fame is not good for anybody, and I don't think humans were wired to be famous. I don't think our brains are designed for this.
I've got goosebumps because you are literally, and I don't think I've ever been brave enough. Thank you for being brave enough to say this publicly. Because I've actually said it privately many times to close confidants. I'm right with you. Keep going. This is good stuff.
Well, so some of the research that I've done, and there needs to be a lot more done, but fame has the same effect on your brain as cocaine. So imagine somebody on coke over a long period of time. Of course it's going to mess them up, and of course, so what it does is it burns off the dopamine receptors.
Yeah.
So what happens is, of course, they go through ups and downs, and they become bipolar and manic and depressed and all these sort of things, because we've just fed them a fame drug and totally screwed them up, and they're just trying to hang on to life. And then what happens for a lot of artists, they go through these cycles. They're on cycle, they're off cycle, they're on cycle, they're off cycle. And if an artist gets 2 or 3 on cycles, that's all of a sudden they become an established artist.
Yeah.
But every time you go off cycle, there's a fear of never being back on cycle, because that's what happens to most artists, right? There's an album that does well, they're off cycle, they try out, they come back with a sophomore album, it doesn't do well, they're off cycle, they get dropped, and they're struggling forever to get back on cycle. Meanwhile, they've spent, even with 2 cycles, they spent 5 or 6 years being fed the fame drug.
Yeah.
Going to the AMAs, going to the Billboard Awards, going to the Grammys, being on the red carpet, people throwing themselves at them. Yeah. And their brain is full of it's the same, again, it's just like doing a bunch of coke.
Yeah.
And then everybody walks away. And we expect them to be normal.
Yeah.
So fame and celebrity is important. I think it's an important part of our culture. But what we need to do is have fame education in place. And we need to do stuff to help support people going into this business that says, you need to manage this fame. You're going to get high on this stuff. And we need to do things to bring you back without damaging your brain. Anyway, we're going off on a complete rabbit.
Look, I would love to explore this again with you in the future, and whether we do it here on the channel, whether we do it privately in an email conversation. That you are speaking truth, my friend, and I think our industry needs to hear this more readily and actually embrace some of the suggestions you're making there, because I agree. I don't think human beings are built to cope with the culture of celebrity. I think it does.
It's not part of evolution. Why
No.
would we have that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Great comments there, and you are right. We are running out of time. We do have some questions. Have you got 5 minutes for us to just quickly go to?
As long as you want. As long as you want. And we didn't even get to the spectrum analyzer, and I would like people to at least have access to that and play with it. So
Let me just bring that up then, so people can know what you're referring to. If I might be able to go to that. So this is what Dave is referring to, everyone. There is a link in the description section below. And perhaps, Dave, this would be a good reason for us to come back and do this again in the future, if you'd be open to that, and we could really dive.
Yeah, I'm close to being able to demonstrate this algorithm that we've written. We've already plugged in voice samples. So just to loop around that real quickly, we put 400 voice samples through this group in Israel. And then what we did is we took each one of those, we used a 5-tone ah, and then each note, and took all the information coming in from each note, and then there's 11 scales of that. So it's 55 notes times 400 to get all the information. Then what we started doing is feeding it new samples and see if it would spit out the correct direction or subtleties. And so right now we're hitting kind of 100% with the voice samples that we put through right now, which is great. There's some things I want to do to polish it a little bit more.
Okay.
But the spectrum analyzer here that I have doesn't show enough of what we saw. But this is fantastic for singers or voice teachers to use to find their formants and understand how you can line a formant and a harmonic up.
Yeah, and just to very, 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 very briefly, and as I say, we could come back and do this again in the future, but if I unfreeze it there and if I go, yeah, and then you can see.
So there's your harmonics.
Yeah.
You're singing that first bump there. So you're singing around. I can't see it, but it looks to be
about a B flat.
Should be somewhere around 200. It was what?
It was a B flat 3.
Yeah, B flat 3. So that's that bump right below the 200.
Yeah.
220.
No, this one
the
here.
bump right above 200. Sorry, the bump right above 200. That's the note you're singing.
Yeah.
And then all the other ones are times 2, times 3, times 4, times 5.
Yeah.
So that's the way the harmonics work. And then what you can do is capture. So what note were you singing, or what were you singing an ah?
I was singing an R vowel on B flat 3.
Okay, so let's capture your formants on that. So unfreeze it.
Yeah.
And let all the harmonics sit to the ground, and then just give me a vocal fry on ah. Okay, so there's your formants. The first two, those first two peaks. Forget the first peak, but the second and third peak. That's your first and second formant.
Yeah.
Now hit snap.
Snap. Yeah.
Okay. Now unfreeze it.
Unfreeze.
And now sing the word love.
On B flat?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Love.
And freeze it. Okay. So now you can see you've got a harmonic right on top of that first formant, which is the reason it's peaked like that.
Yeah.
So now if you want to go a little higher on this, and you keep the vowel exactly the same, so the shape of your throat is exactly the same, nothing changes, you're going to feel the energy go away, because now you're putting that formant between the harmonics, and you're not going to get as much boost.
So if I go,
go on a C now. You look like you're still on a harmonic there, or a formant to me.
I went up to an F4.
Well, of course, now you're in because you're part of the exponential on that. So go to a C.
C4.
Yeah.
Love.
C4. Unfreeze it.
Love.
Now, notice, we should have captured this before, but so notice that the fundamental, the second second harmonic and the third harmonic are not on as much of a spectral slope.
Yeah.
First time we did on the B flat, it was a real high peak on your second and third.
Yeah.
And that's because those were lining up. So formants are basically amplifiers in your throat.
Yes.
And so when you get the harmonics at the right place, the amplifier kicks in and boosts.
Boost. Yes.
Right. And so in contemporary music, when we get a spectral slope where the second, third, and even fourth harmonic are higher than the fundamental, you get a belted sound.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's what we're looking for in pop music, is to have this powerful sound, but without the singer have to work so hard.
Yes.
So if we were to take this C, we would want to modify that vowel slightly so that that harmonic, or the formant, pushes up closer to the harmonic. So instead of saying la, we would go to love, a little ah. Ah is going to raise that formant up. And then it's going to boost that third harmonic up again.
So do I want to try that again?
Yeah, so unfreeze it.
Yep.
And then sing love instead of love.
Okay. Love.
There you go. Exactly. Now
Yeah.
look what happened to that harmonic got boosted again.
It's straight there, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's the power of understanding where the formant is.
Yes.
So you have to take the notes in the song because those are set. You can't change the notes.
Yeah.
Unless you change the key. But let's say you're happen to sing an F. So you know what an F is frequency-wise, then you just go times 2, times 3, times 4. And then you look at your formants and you go, how can I modify the vowels, even bring those formants closer together? Because the closer they get, the higher your boost you get.
Yeah.
And so you can play around with those vowels, and the audience is never going to know that you've gone from love to love.
No.
But your voice will all of a sudden get that boost, and it's much easier. I sort of describe it like a piece of a puzzle. If you move it around, it clicks in place.
Yeah.
You're trying to get it to fit, and all of a sudden, click. And
Yeah.
that's what happens when you get that harmonic and that formant working together. All of a sudden, pop, and you feel it without. You're not pushing, you're not straining, you're not having to work very hard, and you get tons of energy out of it.
And I love the practicality you've built into this program, Dave. And I know it must have been a labour of love, because the science, the coding in behind this must be intense. So
yeah.
So thank you very much.
I don't do the coding.
No, I'm sure you don't.
I have to hire people for that, for sure. Yeah.
So it's very. It certainly takes it and makes it more practical, I think. And just having you walk me through that is really good. And you've now given me some ideas to play around with here in the studio. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I leave it in my studio running on one of the monitors all the time.
Right, it's just sitting there.
And when somebody's curious, I'll explain to them, and we'll take a couple of their vowels, and then.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So
okay.
Just keep watching the space here. We're gonna, I'm gonna be adding this algorithm to the Sing Pro and to this, and so you'll be able to use it to. The system will actually be able to tell what's working in your voice and what needs development. So.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, well let's go to some questions, shall we? And we'll come back right after this. Okay, so we do have some questions. I wanna give Ensign Music our first question. Do you think, sir, how to sign with a record label?
Well,
Yeah.
that could have been the question the whole time. Look, that's number one thing is get out there and just sing. If you're good, people in the industry will find you.
Yeah.
Secondly, always remember that this is a relationship-based business. It's who you know and who you're connected with and how well you built that friendship and that relationship. That's what it is. You wonder how this person or that person has made it. it's all about relationships. So don't be afraid to go out, shake hands, travel across the world to meet people. Those sort of things are invaluable, but there's no replacement for in-person shaking hands, how are you doing kind of thing.
Yeah.
But as far as how do you sound label, that could have been a whole hour conversation.
And more.
And more.
Matt has asked, are you afraid that AI will kill the singing teacher? Well, Matt, let's be clear. You know, there was a bit of clickbait in the title. But
I got you here, Matt.
I don't think AI is going to kill anyone. But and he then goes on to ask, or is that a hypothetical question?
It's not hypothetical on the objective side at all. I'm already seeing it. We're already coding algorithms that are doing it. But on the helping somebody find themselves, no computer's ever going to do that.
Yeah.
And that's what music is. Just like as we sort of started this discussion, music is about humanity, and no computer can do that.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just getting a message from Linda telling me that the music was still on. I think I fixed it, Linda. Thank you for the heads up. Got it. And in fact, actually, Linda asks the next question. When anyone is singing live, that is obviously when it is possible and important to be raw, authentic, warts and all, etc. And therefore connect to your live audience. But how is today's recording artist able to be real, given the amount of technology, production, etc. that can affect their final product, especially with regard to how their own voice sounds? And she goes on to ask how much control does a recording artist have in recording? That is, how much real pressure are they under today to please others, be it producers, social media, expectations, etc.?
Yeah. The funny thing is, with all this crazy social media and everything else going on, nothing's changed as far as music goes. The pendulum will swing back and forth, and we romanticize the 80s or the 70s or the 90s or whatever. But you know why? Because all the crap music faded away. You don't remember the music that wasn't good. And believe me, I can pull up a lot of music from the 80s that was not good. And it just fades away. So we romanticize the era going, remember the 80s? Everybody was so good. There was Toto and there was Van Halen and blah, blah, blah. I go, yeah, there was also, I won't even mention it. But there was also a lot of bad music. There was a lot of music that was the same way.
Yeah.
Producer-driven crap. And, you know, the pendulum will swing. I mean, we've got Melodyne and all these tools and these social media stars that are putting music out. But if you can't tell that when you listen to the song, if it sounds like Max Martin, I'm pretty sure that singer's not going to last.
Yeah.
If it sounds like, look, I mean, I liked Justin Bieber. It was great. I worked with him early on and it was great. And then he came out with Purpose, and I went, this is a great album. This is a artist establishing art album. So good. And, you know, he could afford to Melodyne or hire the best producers or whatever, and yet he put out an album like that. So that's what music will always come back around to what's good.
True that. We'll give Matt the last question, and then we're going to finish up. Do you encourage or discourage the idea of comfort zone for either voice lessons and performance, or voice lessons or performance? I think it's a double up on the thing. Do you encourage or discourage the idea of comfort zone? I'm not actually sure what the question there is.
You mean like in the studio?
Yeah, I'm not sure. To be honest, I'm trying to interpret the question myself. Matt, we might have to. I might get you to perhaps clarify that in the comments section of the video, perhaps later, if you decide you want to do, Matt, or maybe even ask the same question over in the Facebook community page. And I think I'll see what I can do to answer that question for you. Dave, thank you very much for your time. And
yeah, this has been great. It's been fantastic chatting with you, Dan.
Thank you so much. It is actually a real honor for me to meet you, and even you have those meetings where you walk away feeling affirmed, and I think I will walk away feeling very affirmed
Fantastic.
You've really spoken to a number of often unspoken thoughts that I've had about our industry and where it's headed, and the impact that it has on our fellow human beings, and I will feel more assured to perhaps take the risk of voicing those in the future. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
And
it's fantastic having a meeting of the minds with you though on that.
Yeah, it really is, and I'm the richer for it. So thank you very much. If you stick around, I'll just close up, and then we'll hopefully we can have a little bit more of a longer chat. Let me just go over to here, would you like to give everyone a wave as we finish up? Thank you very much for.
Thank you, everyone. I
you.
appreciate everyone's attendance and participation. It's really, I'm honored to be on here.
Yeah, thank you. That was just tremendous. It really went in angles and directions that I just had no expectation that it would, but I'm so pleased that it did. And as I admitted earlier, the AI killing off the singing teacher was a bit of clickbait, but hopefully we still, we legitimately discussed this topic, and so hopefully you're not going to chalk that up against me, or certainly not Dave, because it wasn't Dave's idea to use it as clickbait. If you've enjoyed today's video, please hit the thumbs up, and make sure that you share it on the socials. Leave any further questions that you have in the comments section below, and I'll certainly do my best to respond as best as I can. And I hope you've enjoyed the video. Next week, we are going to be coming together. We don't have a guest next week. It'll just be little old me. I've already got the subject written up, but I forgot to write it down. And so I can't remember what it is. I'm sure it'll be interesting. We'll have a great time. And so don't ever forget, we meet here every Monday, Australian Eastern Standard Time at 2 p.m. And that's important too for those of you who are watching in Australia live, because now we've moved to daylight saving in the southern states, and so your new time is 3 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time is 2 p.m. I very much look forward to seeing you again very soon. As always, I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.